Hello humans, quick Sunday video. Dr. Kai here, and this is the Varjo Aero, the most expensive consumer grade VR headset, virtual reality headset that you can buy at the moment. It's made by a Finnish company called Varjo, and may I just say that all Finnish products are absolutely excellent. Like, I've got a pair of Finnish scissors and they're just the best, okay? You have to take my word on that. And there's a sieve as well. It's like a collapsible sieve, it's really cool. Also, I'm married to a Finn, so maybe I'm a bit biased. Varjo is a company that generally specializes in professional grade headsets, so this is their cheapest model at a modest, let's say, 2,000 euros, although some of their headsets run over 10,000 euros. They've been in the game a while and they know what they're doing, and they decided to take their hands at the consumer market. And may I just say that this is a perfect headset. Actually, it's not a perfect headset. It's got one flaw, which I will get onto later, and I did almost send it back because of that one flaw, especially given the price tag. I'd like to explain that flaw to you. I think it's really important that you know, but I'd also like to make sure that I get through that I have changed my mind. I have fallen in love with this headset. It has answered all virtual reality questions to me, and let me just tell you a bit about me, because I am a big enthusiast. And you do have to be an enthusiast to spend this much money on a virtual reality headset. Obviously, my first VR experience was in the 90s when I was a kid in the Trocadero in London. They had like a demo and it was rubbish. I was obviously very interested in the idea, and I've been dreaming about it since I was a kid. And then, of course, when the NVIDIA stereoscopic 3D glasses came out, I got them in about 2010, I think, roughly. And then I never played a game in 2D again until virtual reality came out. I got the DK2, then I got the CV1, the Oculus. Then I moved on to Vive. I got initially the Vive, and then I switched to the Vive Pro. I got the Gear VR mod lenses for that. Then I got the Valve Index. I tried the Pimax at the time. I also tried the Vive Pro 2. I had the HP Reverb G1 for a while, and then the HP Reverb G2 I still have, which is over here. I've modded it, as you can see. I've got a video about that. And also, and then finally, after the G2, I got this. So mainly I'm going to give an anecdotal description based on my experience of using all these headsets, comparing it, where it fits, and basically whether it's any good. Although for the specaholics out there, I will give you a quick rundown of some of the important stats. If you want to find out more about the specs, you can go online. There are plenty of videos, there's plenty of websites. Starting with the resolution. So the way VR seems to have progressed is starting with the DK2, then the CV1 and that generation, then the Vive Pro generation, and then the G1 generation, G2 generation, they were like the same. And then this is another generation. Every single generation, the number of pixels seems to go up by about 1.5 to 2 times. So this is smack in the middle of that. It's 1.67 times greater than the previous generation. So it fits with every jump that you've done before, if you've gone through the process like I have. And basically, whenever you go up a generation in terms of resolution in VR headsets, you get a wow moment where everything feels so much better, and you can't believe you ever saw it any other way, and you can't believe how bad it was before. And that has happened again with the Varjo Aero compared to the G1 and the G2. The pixel density is now almost retina level. You can still see the pixels, and I know they say that every time. This time I'm actually saying it in a way that I want to imply that you really can't. Okay? You'll never notice them unless once in a blue moon they'll just somehow, just about these tiny little pixels you'll see. But generally speaking, the image you're looking at is clear, crisp, to the max. It's more than you're ever going to want. In fact, so much so that I am going to say that I don't think that there will be another headset after this that I'm going to bother getting. Also, with all the other good things about it, that statement is qualified, and I am going to get onto that in a minute. But just in terms of the resolution, now I'm running this computer on a 3090, which is the fastest graphics card pretty much out at the moment, with the most VRAM, which is very important for VR. And I'm running a 1290K Intel processor, which is one of the fastest consumer grade processors. And what we're doing with those is running most games in this with a very decent frame rate. Some games there'll be compromise with the frame rate. You know, there'll be a bit of a frame rate drop because the resolution on this is a beast, and even with all that technology powering it, it's still not quite enough. So what I'm going to try and basically say and convince you guys is that in order to make a significant difference now, what we're going to have to do is widen the FOV. Widen it greatly. And that means we're going to have to add loads more pixels. And between you and me, I'm thinking that the 3090 is not quite adequate for this. So that means the next generation of graphics cards is going to be probably adequate for this. Not on all games, like Microsoft Flight Simulator is probably going to need another 2 generations of graphics cards to come out before it's looking like nice and smooth like other games. So adding on top of that an extra demands from another headset and more pixels is probably not going to be where this is going right now. Probably going to have to wait for another 3 or 4 generations of graphics cards before we can look at VR headsets that are going to have enough power juicing them up that they can support more pixels and more FOV. So this is the final headset as far as I'm concerned, and I'm assuming that by the time that happens, we'll have changed the technology altogether. We really will have like glasses or contact lenses or who knows what's next, you know? All kinds of interesting technologies out there. So you'll be able to just sit on your couch and have a full screen of VR, you know, with a pair of glasses. That's where I'm going next. So I think I'm going to be keeping this forever, which has gone into my decision about keeping this instead of sending it back. There are loads of other cool features on it over the G2. So you have to realize that the money you've spent on this has really, really been used well. 2,000 euros covers a lot of, like, you know, the extras. When you buy a car and you buy an expensive car, the expensive car always has all the extras and it's always like really, really good. It's just like that here. So firstly, the strap. I really want to make a good, strong emphasis on how good the strap is. You've got support from the back, and unlike any other headset except the PlayStation one, it's got 4 head support. This is more like, you know, the very top, the angle of your head, just the very top of your forehead. And basically, the main grip, or a lot of the grip, gets supported here, which takes a lot of weight off the face. Normally, you'd be, on all other headsets that I've used, you have a lot of pressure on your cheekbones, on your forehead, and on the sides of your skull. And it makes playing unbearable after a while. With this, I can play with this literally 6 hours straight. The pain gets to a certain level of pressure. You know, any amount of pressure is going to cause some pain. But it's definitely very, very low, very, very tolerable, very, very forgettable. You can always just loosen things up whenever you need like a quick break. Generally speaking, it's really, really good. I'm looking at maybe taking off the lower part of the gasket, so everything is just supported at the top. That's how I basically modded my G2. The G2 has this, which is where my forehead goes, and then these basically just hover in front of my eyes. I've got a video about it, and that is ultimate comfort in my opinion. That's where there's no pressure at all, and this has already got half of that there. So enough about that, but basically the strap mechanism, where you can tighten in 2 or 3 different ways. So you can lower it and raise it based on where your forehead is. You can tighten at the back, and you can also actually tilt it. Look, that actually tilts the whole thing down. So you'll find this amazing like combination of those that will just stay on your head perfectly. It's got these 2 buttons here that access the menus and can be set to various things. I haven't really played with that yet, but I know one of the options, of course, is the inbuilt desktop. They've got some good overlay software there that displays your desktops, and you can like have it come up at the press of a button. Find that very useful, even though I already do have some very good overlay software on Steam, like OVR Toolkit. But this is just generally nice to have as well. It's got right, now let's get onto the lenses. Firstly, as you can see, I've just applied a little bit of tape because it's got one of those annoying nose flaps. I'll put an image on the screen right now of what it looks like. Those nose flaps are designed to block out light, but all I find they do is just hurt my nose. Any pressure on my nose for more than 2 minutes just starts to hurt, even if it's the lightest, most flimsy, lovely little plastic that's barely little kissing your nose, you know? So I've taped that up, and yeah, I'm going to have to come up with a more permanent solution, I think, at some point. But let me talk about the lenses. So the lenses are called aspheric lenses. Aspheric lenses have come to solve a problem. Varjo are marketing them as superior, high-quality professional lenses, much better than the cheap consumer lenses, Fresnel, sorry, I always say Fresnel, the Fresnel lenses used by almost all other headsets. So let me tell you why there's a difference in lenses between various headsets. So in case you didn't know, when you are looking at screens that are only a few inches in front of your eye, you need special lenses to bring those into focus. You also need to solve, in so doing, you're creating a bit of a distortion because the glass has a refractive index. So you have to come up with a very clever lens design to make it look normal. Um, there's also the problem of chromatic aberration. So in the very corners of your vision, where the refractive index is quite high, you get a prism effect where the colors will start to split into the rainbow, and you'll start to see colors like bleeding out of your pixels. So Fresnel lenses are there to have a gradual changing of the refractive index and making sure that doesn't happen. And Fresnel lenses can be used to also make sure that the entire image stays totally undistorted, like you're looking as if you're just looking through glass. You're not looking through some kind of fish tank or anything, if you know what I mean. And the G2 had that perfect. And the G2 was really, really good as well because Fresnel lenses often have God rays where, you know, any light that's on the screen will get caught in those different steps of the refractive index and create like a line out and like radiating out and circling all the way around. And it's very, very distracting. The Vive and the Vive Pro had that really bad, I remember. The G2 didn't have that at all. It was really, really, really good. The only downside to the G2 lenses was that the sweet spot, like where you have to line up the iris of your eye, the pupil of your eye rather, in order to see through it as crystal clear as it's designed to be, is very, very small and unforgiving. So you have to have it very, very like spot on in position, and then everything's clear. But the slightest deviation and things will start to get unclear, and you're constantly adjusting, and it did get quite annoying. Also, it was a little bit bad at the peripheral vision. So when you're looking straight ahead, everything's crystal clear, so long as you're in the sweet spot. But towards the edges, it starts to get a bit blurry. Although it wasn't that bad on the G2. There was, if you got it just right, you'd really be able to get it quite edge-to-edge clarity almost, you know. So what the aspheric lenses have done is they've got rid of the Fresnel thing, sorry, and they have increased the sweet spot, just like the Gear VR mod for the Vive Pro, if anybody remembers that. So that's what these have done. So it's absolutely amazing. You do get absolute edge-to-edge clarity. You also get an amazingly forgiving sweet spot. So it's just, they are really, really, really professional grade lenses, and they're worth every penny. And I hope that they were expensive because I want to know what all my money went into. And there's one downside, and this is the downside that I was getting to at the beginning of the video. Around the edges, you have what's called barrel distortion. You get a fish, like a fish tank sort of effect. If you come from the G2, which is what I came from, or from many of the other headsets that didn't have this problem at all, this will be quite a shocker. The first time you put it on, you're going to almost rip it off your face like, ugh, what is that? It's going to make you feel sick. The best way I can describe it is as you get to the edge of the lens, the image starts to stretch. It gets longer and longer and longer. So imagine rotating your head and watching the images, you know, for example, the buildings in Fallout. As they reach the edge of your vision, as you're turning, they'll start to stretch. And that creates like an optical illusion that the world is swimming around you. And it creates a sense that you're like a fish looking out of a fish tank. Now, that's a bit unfair. Right in the very center and most of the center, there's no distortion at all. I would say there's a little tiny bit, and if you're very sensitive, you might notice it, but that could just be me imagining it. It's really hard to tell. There's all sorts of optical illusions here. It's basically the 10% at the edges that is bad. So I couldn't get used to it. I put it on and I couldn't not notice it. Everything I'm doing is marred by this feeling of the whole world being distorted. I was very, very upset. I went online, I started ranting, you know how you do. I had some people come and tell me that this is a known thing, but you get used to it. And I said, I can't get used to this. I can't. I was convinced. I was so upset. I was really going to be sending it back. How can you possibly get used to this? And in the end, I thought, you know what? I really like every other aspect of the headset, so I'm going to give it a good go. And I did. I sat there for 6 hours and I played Half-Life Alyx and all my other games as well. For 6 hours, I just didn't take it off. And after those 6 hours, I suddenly realized that I hadn't noticed the barrel distortion at all for the last few hours. And it's now permanent. Every time I put it on, I don't notice it. I find it very, very difficult to notice. I have to actively look for it to see it. And once that happens, then then I was able to really enjoy the headset. And the feeling that I got when I put on this headset is, and I'm not going to exaggerate now, that I was really there. So every time I've said those words in the past, although I really have meant them, I have always been hiding the fact that I've been a little bit underwhelmed, a little bit disappointed, that I can still see the seams. I still don't quite feel like I'm there. Something's still missing. Something's still not convincing my brain completely that I'm there. Although, now that I've got this, I really do mean it. I had so many moments in the last few days of gaming in virtual reality where I was just, I'm here. I am actually here. It's so crystal clear. The clarity of the lenses plays a big role in that. The clarity of the resolution of the screens also is vital to that. The fact that I'm able to up the super sampling so I can get some really good anti-aliasing, and you know, when you up the super sampling, you're increasing the pixels behind the pixels, which actually manages to make it through the pixels because you're constantly moving your head. So it makes the scene more detailed, you know. And also, I haven't mentioned, but the lenses, the screens are brighter than the G2. They're the brightest screens I've ever seen in a VR headset. And they also have the best color. It's just like looking at a expensive, good quality screen. So all my games have really come to life. The lighting now in the games, which is a very big part of realism, is now so much more impactful, so much more high quality. And it really, I don't know what to say. Yeah, they've been very, very clever with the way they've set it up, that when you put it on, you're transported to another world. It also helps by the fact that it's a very light headset. I haven't had to mod it, like you can see with my G2. I've had to put weights on the back because the front is so heavy. I haven't had to do that here, so the whole thing remains very, very light, and the way the straps and all that work, it's fantastic. You can even lie down with it. The other night I just went and lay on my couch with the headset on, and I was just like floating in space listening to a podcast. It was brilliant. I fell asleep. It's a brilliant thing to wake up in VR. It's very, very comfortable. Not only is it very, very light, but it's also got some cool features. So for example, it has an eye camera. You want to see what that looks like? Look on the screen now. Uh-oh, this is a face reveal by Dr. Guy. You're going to see my eyes. Oh, there you go. Hello. Dr. Guy here. So now I have to do this cool calibration where I look at this dot in the center of my screen. And I find that very hard to do because I've got pretty big fovea. Hello. So you can see those circles are basically lights, infrared lights inside the headset that exist over here. You can actually see them probably on the camera. It's got some motion prediction that is supported by various games. So for example, with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, don't let Steam VR take over that. May I recommend you let Varjo handle that. You make sure that in system OpenXR is ticked here, and you'll find then that the motion prediction will work in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so you can actually get much smoother scenes. Oh my goodness, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Compared to the G2, which was amazing. Look, Microsoft Flight Simulator in the G2 had this problem where when you look down, you see like a shimmer because of the pixels. You can still see the pixels even in the G2 with its incredibly high resolution. And the G2's color wasn't the best, especially like in the blues for some reason. So the blue sky just seemed dull. It was like almost a gray. It's like, this is, you know, I'm looking at a city 200 miles away at the foot of a mountain, and I can still make out the tiny little buildings. You know, they're like little dots, but you can still make them out. The shape of buildings, squares, you can see the roofs, you know. You're flying over England and you can see a tree 6,000 feet below. A fir tree, you can make out the triangle of it. You can still see the branches, even though it's like the tiniest little line, really. It's exactly as your eye would see it. The game itself and the VR headset combine, they marry, and you're there. You're flying in a plane and you have the whole world. So this is a real, like, bargain. Think about it. For 2,000 euros, you pay for 1,000 plane tickets to anywhere in the world, as well as all the other places you can go in VR, like Elite Dangerous in space, Space Engine in space, No Man's Sky in sci-fi worlds. At Half-Life Alyx, you can play your favorite games, your sci-fi dystopian future games, Fallout 4, your fantasy games like Skyrim VR. Like, there's so many good VR games that you can play. Although, then again, there's not that many. Okay, also worth noting about this headset is that it seems to have better performance than G2 sometimes because it's got foveated rendering. I'm not sure if that's actually activated in any games, but it still seems to feel like some of the performance is better than the G2. I did also upgrade my CPU at the same time, so that's not a completely accurate statement necessarily, but other people seem to be finding that it's got better performance than G2 in some games. It's got a higher horizontal field of view, but possibly a lower vertical field of view. Sometimes you do feel a little bit boxed in, but it's so comfortable you can tighten it and get really close to those lenses. I do that all the time, and once you're there, you're there. It's just amazing. The extra little bit of horizontal field of view, saved also by shaving off some of the pixels around your nose. It's just brilliant. As I say, they built this very, very cleverly. You do get some chromatic aberration towards the edges, but it's very, very minimal. The blacks are very, very good. They're maybe slightly worse than the G2, but they're still good enough that you can play a space game and feel totally lost in the blackness of space, the inky black of space. It's brilliant. Obviously not as good as an OLED screen, but we haven't seen those for a while in VR. Worth mentioning is that not many games right now have motion prediction. It's all handled by the Varjo based software, which is what you can see right now. And it doesn't rely on the Steam VR1 at all anymore. So that's the thing that's hopefully going to get improved. I haven't really had any problems with it. As I say, I've had some really good performance. Swapping some super sampling for some real pixels, which is basically what I've done in this upgrade, has also helped. Lastly, worth mentioning is that it does have some inbuilt cooling, so it never gets hot, and it's actually quite nice having a bit of a breeze on your face sometimes, especially when things get a bit hot and sticky, with, as many VR veterans will know, is a thing. So yeah, it's really, really good. It even adds to the immersion sometimes. It feels like you've got a breeze on your face. It's really weird. One downside is that it's got no built-in audio. For every VR headset I've used, I've ended up taking off the audio, so for me that's not a problem, but you might wish to be wary of that. It's a bit inconvenient. There doesn't seem to be any way of doing wireless. It's got a wire, although it's a very nice wire, much better than the G2 wire. You don't feel it at all. It's got some nice places where it slots into. And one thing that I thought I'd mention is that in Flight Simulator you can't use overlays at the moment. I'm not sure why. Any overlay software, whether it's coming from Varjo Base itself, or if you get it handled by Steam VR and use the Steam VR one or one of the third-party ones there, it just doesn't work. It's very, very wobbly. I used to be able to do that in the G2, so I could bring up my overlays and do some work or whatever, do some computing while flying on a plane. I can't do that anymore. I'm a bit disappointed. Hopefully that'll be fixed in the future. But in the meantime, I can use Flight Simulator for podcasts and music, so that's not the end of the world if I want to relax while in VR. So that is everything that I have to say about the Varjo headset. Don't let the barrel distortion put you off. When you first get it, if you find it shocking, give it a good session before sending it back. Some of the Varjo themselves give you a 14-day window of returning it for any reason. They want you to try it. Some of the third parties, especially in England, depending on the local laws, like in England, it's up to 30 days. Their support is very, very, very good. Being in touch with them straight away, I had a problem and they shipped me a new one straight away. I won't go into that. But yeah, they've got very, very good support. It's basically down to your finances. So if you are an enthusiast and you desperately want it, I'm sure you'll find a way. Where there's a will, there is a way. This is the only way I can describe how I have this in my hands right now. And it's very, very good, good for maintaining sanity during difficult times, during claustrophobic times. This is like a window out into many, many worlds. So it's one of those things where making the case whether it's a moral spend can be done, especially if you have someone you need to negotiate with. But either way, I thought I'd just let you know that it's a very, very good headset. In fact, it's perfect. I can't find any fault with it apart from that barrel distortion thing that I mentioned. And even that, as I say, I have to try to notice it now. And it's so much so that I'm happy to keep it. And even though it's a big drain on my bank account and I don't know how, it's going to take me a long time to pay back the money that I borrowed for this. So it's still, I think it's worth it. That's my personal opinion. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. If I've left anything out, look in the comments, look in the description. I probably added it there. And I wish everybody good luck in achieving their gaming success, their gaming dream setups. This is good news. The fact that this exists now, as the technology improves, and basically you're looking in a couple of generations' time for a few £100s, you'll be able to buy something as good as this. So just be patient. We're nearly there, okay? I think the perfect VR headset is now officially out. It exists. So good luck, everyone, and we're living in good times, believe it or not. So long, humans.
To the heavens to see what secrets they hold. Join me as I sail amongst the stars.